I just want to see my dog.
The warden's keys jingled against the cold metal bars. Death row. Cell 47. Marcus Williams had 12 hours left to live. But his final request wasn't what anyone expected. Not a meal. Not a phone call. Not even a prayer. He wanted to see his dog. What happened next would shake the entire justice system to its core. Disclaimer. This story is filled with sudden twists you would never see coming, but it is completely fictional. But this story, it starts long before that final day. It starts with a choice that would haunt 3 families forever. 23 years earlier, in the heart of Detroit, Marcus Williams was just another kid trying to survive. The neighborhood had a rhythm. Gunshots at night. Sirens at dawn. Mothers crying behind closed doors. Marcus lived with his grandmother, Miss Ruby, in a house that barely held together. The roof leaked. The heat worked when it wanted to. But there was love in those walls. Real love. Miss Ruby worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. Marcus knew this. At 15, he felt the weight of being the man of the house. That's when he found the puppy. Half dead in an alley. Ribs showing through matted fur. Eyes barely open. "Grandma, we can't just leave him," Marcus pleaded, cradling the tiny creature. Miss Ruby looked at her grandson. Then at the puppy. They barely had enough for themselves. "What you gonna name him?" she asked, her heart melting. "Justice," Marcus said without hesitation. "Because everybody deserves a second chance. If you've ever saved something broken, you know that feeling. Drop a heart in the comments if you understand." Justice grew strong under their care. But the streets of Detroit had other plans for Marcus Williams. The first betrayal came from someone he trusted most. Tommy Richardson was Marcus's best friend. Had been since childhood. They shared everything, dreams, fears, even the last piece of bread when times got rough. Tommy's family was different. They had money. His father owned a small construction business. His mother was a nurse. They lived in the better part of the neighborhood. But Tommy wanted the streets. He wanted the fast money, the respect, the power that came with running drugs. "Man, you're wasting your time with them books," Tommy would say, watching Marcus study by candlelight when the electricity got cut off. "My cousin Jerome is making $3,000 a week." $3,000, Marcus. That's more than your grandma makes in 3 months. Marcus knew Tommy was right about the money. But Miss Ruby's words echoed in his head. Easy money ain't never easy, baby. It always comes with a price. The price came sooner than anyone expected. One night, Tommy showed up at Marcus's door, blood on his shirt, panic in his eyes. "I need your help, man. I need it bad." Here's where the first shocking twist changes everything. Tommy had been selling drugs for Jerome. But he'd been skimming money off the top. Jerome found out. Now Jerome wanted his money back, plus interest. $20,000. "I don't have 20,000, Marcus. Jerome's gonna kill me. He's gonna kill my whole family." Marcus looked at his best friend, then at Justice sleeping by the fire. The dog had grown into a beautiful German Shepherd mix. Loyal. Protective. Everything Marcus wished he could be for the people he loved. "What do you want me to do about it?" "There's this jewelry store downtown. Owner's some rich, white dude who probably got insurance anyway. We go in, get what we need, get out. Nobody gets hurt." Marcus felt his world shift. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about choosing who he wanted to be. But then came the revelation that changed his mind. Tommy pulled out a photo. Jerome standing over Marcus's grandmother at the grocery store where she worked nights. "He knows where she works, Marcus. He knows her schedule. He's waiting for my answer." What would you do? Your best friend's life, your grandmother's safety, all hanging in the balance. Tell us in the comments. How far would you go to protect the ones you love? The jewelry store robbery was supposed to be simple. In and out. 3 minutes max. But nothing about that night went according to plan. The owner, Mr. Benjamin Goldstein, was working late. He was supposed to be gone by closing time. The alarm system was supposed to be disabled. Instead, Marcus and Tommy walked into a trap that would destroy everything they thought they knew about loyalty, friendship, and justice. Because Mr. Goldstein wasn't alone that night. And the person with him was about to shatter Marcus Williams' world completely. The person sitting behind that jewelry counter, counting the day's receipts alongside Mr. Goldstein, was Tommy's father. Charles Richardson, the construction business owner, the respectable family man, the man who had been laundering money through the jewelry store for 3 years. Marcus froze. Tommy's face went white. "Dad, Mr. Richardson looked at his son holding a gun, wearing a mask that had slipped down around his neck. The disappointment in his eyes was crushing. But then came the second devastating twist. Put the gun down, son. This isn't what you think it is. Mr. Richardson wasn't just laundering money. He was working undercover for the FBI, the jewelry store, Jerome's drug operation, even Tommy's involvement. It was all part of a federal investigation into the biggest drug trafficking ring Detroit had ever seen. And Marcus Williams had just walked into the middle of it. You were never supposed to be here, Mr. Richardson said, his voice breaking as he looked at Marcus. Any of this. Mr. Goldstein reached for something under the counter. Not a gun. A phone. I have to call this in, Charles. You know I do. But Tommy still had the gun. And Tommy was desperate. No, you're not calling nobody. The gun went off. Mr. Goldstein collapsed behind the counter, blood spreading across the floor. Tommy stared at the weapon in his hands like it wasn't real. Like this wasn't happening. Marcus ran to the wounded man. Mr. Goldstein was still breathing, but barely. We gotta call an ambulance, Marcus said. We gotta go, Tommy screamed. We gotta go right now. But Mr. Richardson had already hit a silent alarm. Police sirens were getting closer. Here's where the story takes a turn that nobody saw coming. Mr. Richardson looked at both boys. Then he made a choice that would haunt everyone involved for the next 2 decades. He handed Marcus the gun. Take it, he whispered urgently. Take it and run. What? Why? Tommy's got a scholarship to college. He's got a future. You. Mr. Richardson paused, the truth hanging heavy in the air. You got nothing to lose that you ain't already lost. The racism in that statement cut deeper than any blade. Here was a man who had watched Marcus study by candlelight, who knew how hard he worked, how much he cared for his grandmother. And still, when it came down to choosing which black boy's life mattered more, he chose his son. Dad, no. I did this. I shot him. You were never here, Tommy. You understand me? You were never here. The sirens were getting closer. Marcus had seconds to decide. He could tell the truth. Watch his best friend go to prison for a crime he committed. Watch Tommy's family fall apart. Or he could take the blame. Save Tommy. Protect the only family that had ever shown him kindness outside of Miss Ruby. Marcus took the gun. But as he ran through those back streets, justice running beside him like always, he didn't know that Mr. Richardson had made one more phone call. A call that would ensure Marcus Williams never made it to trial. The police found Marcus 3 blocks away, the gun still in his hand. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was what happened during the interrogation. Detective Sarah Coleman sat across from Marcus in that cold interview room. She was young for a detective. Black. From the same neighborhood Marcus called home. I know your grandmother, she said softly. Miss Ruby used to babysit my cousin. She's a good woman. Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. So I'm going to ask you one time, and I want you to tell me the truth. Did you shoot Benjamin Goldstein? This was Marcus's moment. His chance to tell the real story. To save himself. But then Detective Coleman said something that changed everything. Because Benjamin Goldstein isn't dead. Marcus felt the world tilt beneath him. He's alive. In surgery, but alive. And he's talking. Mr. Goldstein had seen everything. He knew Tommy fired the gun. He knew Mr. Richardson handed the weapon to Marcus. He knew exactly what happened in that store. So here's what I don't understand, Detective Coleman continued. Why would you take the blame for something you didn't do? This is where everything you think you know about loyalty and friendship gets turned upside down. Because while Marcus was sitting in that interrogation room, trying to protect Tommy Richardson, Tommy was 3 miles away, signing a statement that blamed everything on Marcus Williams. The statement said Marcus planned the whole robbery. Said Marcus brought the gun. Said Marcus fired the shot when Mr. Goldstein tried to stop them. Tommy painted himself as the victim. The good kid who got caught up with the wrong crowd. The betrayal was complete. But Detective Coleman wasn't finished. There's something else you need to know, Marcus. About that night. About why everything went wrong. She slid a file across the table. Inside were photos. Wire transcripts. Recorded conversations. Tommy hadn't been skimming money from Jerome. Tommy had been working for his father the whole time. The FBI operation wasn't targeting Jerome's drug ring. It was targeting Marcus Williams. If this revelation just hit you like a punch to the gut, make sure you're subscribed because this story is about to get even more twisted. For 18 months, Tommy had been feeding information to his father about Marcus's activities. His schedule, his relationships, his vulnerabilities. They were building a case to flip Marcus into an informant against the real target, Miss Ruby. Marcus's grandmother, the woman who worked 3 jobs and saved dying puppies, was the head of a massive money laundering operation that stretched from Detroit to Chicago. The construction jobs, the nursing shifts, the late nights at the grocery store. None of it was what it seemed. Miss Ruby wasn't struggling to make ends meet. She was moving millions of dollars through legitimate businesses, cleaning money for drug organizations across the Midwest. And Marcus never knew. "Your grandmother is the most wanted woman in Michigan," Detective Coleman said quietly. "And you are going to be the key to bringing her down." Marcus felt everything he believed about his life crumble. "That puppy you saved? Justice? Your grandmother bought him from a breeder in Chicago for $3,000. She needed you to feel connected to something so you'd stay close to home. Stay predictable." Even the dog, his most loyal companion, was part of the deception. But the final twist was yet to come. Mr. Goldstein survived the shooting. But during his recovery, he made a decision that shocked everyone involved in the case. He refused to press charges. "That boy didn't pull the trigger," he told the district attorney. "And sending him to prison won't fix what's broken in his community." Instead, Mr. Goldstein did something unprecedented. He hired Marcus Williams as his apprentice. Not out of pity, not out of guilt, but because during those few minutes in the jewelry store, before everything went wrong, he had watched Marcus try to save his life. "I've been in this business 40 years, Mr. Goldstein explained to the judge during Marcus's sentencing hearing. "I know character when I see it. This young man has it." The judge sentenced Marcus to 5 years probation and 2,000 hours of community service. Tommy Richardson got a scholarship to Michigan State and never spoke to Marcus again. Mr. Richardson's FBI operation continued, but without Marcus as an informant, they could never get close enough to Miss Ruby to build a case. And Miss Ruby? She disappeared one night, leaving behind only a letter for Marcus. "Baby, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Everything I did to give you choices I never had. The money is yours if you want it, but I hope you choose something different. I hope you choose to be the man justice always saw in you. Love, Grandma." Marcus found the letter on his pillow, next to Justice, who was sleeping peacefully in the morning sun. He burned the letter without reading the bank account numbers at the bottom. The lesson here isn't about choosing right from wrong. It's about choosing who you want to be when everyone around you is pretending to be someone else. For 20 years, Marcus worked beside Mr. Goldstein, learning the jewelry business, building something real with his hands and his mind. Justice grew old beside them both, a constant reminder that sometimes the most honest relationships come from the most unexpected places. When Mr. Goldstein retired, he sold the store to Marcus for $1. Marcus renamed it Second Chance's Jewelry and Repair. He hired kids from the neighborhood, taught them the trade, gave them the choices he never had. But this story doesn't end with success and redemption. It ends with that prison cell we started with. Because 20 years later, Tommy Richardson came back into Marcus's life. And this time, he brought something much worse than a gun. Tommy Richardson returned to Detroit as a DEA agent. Ivy League education. Federal badge. A mission to clean up the streets he'd helped corrupt decades earlier. His first target, Marcus Williams. Not because Marcus was guilty of anything new, but because Tommy needed to finish what his father had started. The federal investigation into Miss Ruby's money laundering operation had never closed. It had just gone cold, until Tommy discovered that Marcus had been making monthly deposits into a specific bank account for 20 years. The same account Miss Ruby had left him information about in her letter. The account Marcus had never touched. But someone had been making deposits. Mr. Goldstein. Every month, like clockwork, Benjamin Goldstein had been putting money into Miss Ruby's account. Not as a payment, as an investment. The jewelry store had been a front all along. Not for Miss Ruby's operation, but for Mr. Goldstein's. The old man had been using Marcus as an unwitting courier, cleaning money through legitimate jewelry sales and repairs. When DEA agents raided Second Chance's Jewelry and Repair, they found 20 years' worth of financial records that painted Marcus as the head of the very organization his grandmother had once run. The betrayal was complete. The man who had saved him had been using him all along. Wait, think you've figured out how this ends? Think again, because the biggest shock is still coming. Marcus Williams was sentenced to death, not for the jewelry store robbery that started it all, but for the murder of Benjamin Goldstein. The man who had survived Tommy's gunshot 20 years earlier had died of a heart attack the night before Marcus's arrest. And Tommy Richardson, wearing a federal badge and carrying the weight of his father's legacy, had convinced a jury that Marcus Williams had been planning Goldstein's death for 2 decades. The perfect revenge for a crime he never committed. Now you understand why Marcus's final request wasn't for family, or friends, or even forgiveness. He wanted to see justice. The one relationship in his life that had never been a lie. But here's the final twist that changes everything you think you know about this story. Justice had died 15 years earlier. Marcus knew this, had buried the dog himself in the backyard of the jewelry store. So why was he asking to see a dead dog? Because Marcus Williams had one last truth to reveal. One last piece of evidence that would expose everyone who had used him, betrayed him, and ultimately condemned him. He had been recording conversations for 20 years. Every meeting with Mr. Goldstein. Every visit from Tommy's father. Every phone call from Miss Ruby before she disappeared. All of it stored in a digital collar that Justice had worn until the day he died. A collar that was buried with the dog. Marcus's final request wasn't about saying goodbye. It was about digging up the truth. What would you have done differently? What moment in this story could have changed everything? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this conversation is just getting started. The warden denied Marcus's request. Benjamin Goldstein's real financial records were never found. Tommy Richardson was promoted to head of the Detroit DEA field office. And Marcus Williams was executed on a cold Tuesday morning, taking the truth with him to his grave. But sometimes, justice comes from the most unexpected places. The week after Marcus's execution, an anonymous package arrived at the Detroit Free Press. Inside were 20 years of audio recordings, financial documents, photographs, everything needed to expose the real conspiracy that had destroyed 3 families and corrupted an entire justice system. The package was addressed simply, "From Justice." The investigation that followed brought down 8 federal agents, including Tommy Richardson and his father. Mr. Goldstein's estate was sued for $30 million. And Miss Ruby's money totally disappeared and was never heard of. Her file and case still remains open till date, though assumed dead. If you made it this far, you know this isn't just a story about one man's final request. It's about the price of loyalty in a world built on lies. Hit that subscribe button because there are more stories like this that need to be told. The truth about Marcus Williams didn't save his life, but it saved his legacy. Second Chance's Jewelry and Repair still operates today, run by the kids Marcus trained. They keep a photo of him and Justice behind the counter. And every month, they put flowers on the graves of a man and his dog who proved that sometimes, the most honest relationship you'll ever have is with something that can't lie to you. What's the most loyal relationship in your life? Tell us in the comments. And remember, in a world full of people pretending to be something they're not, maybe the realest thing you can find is something that just loves you for who you are. That's why Marcus Williams wanted to see his dog one last time. Not because justice could save him, but because justice was the only one who had never betrayed him. And in the end, that's all any of us really want. Someone who sees us for who we really are. And loves us anyway. His last wish before execution was to see his dog. But what happened changed everything. Not just for him, but for everyone who thought they knew the difference between loyalty and lies. Subscribe if this story moved you. Share it if you know someone who needs to hear it. And remember, the most important stories are the ones that teach us something about ourselves. This was Black Nation. Until next time, keep seeking the truth.